If you read the title, The Mirror Trap, Why Cultural Fit Kills Innovation, and your first thought was DEI, you're incorrect. True innovation requires cognitive diversity, which naturally creates friction. The data suggests that the companies most terrified of this friction are often the ones that miss out on the very progress they claim to want. Recognizing that a candidate's value lies in their willingness to stand out rather than blend in would be a fundamental shift for the modern workplace. To be clear, this is not about DEI or racial diversity, however you want to call it. People are distinct and different regardless of their background. This is what I call cognitive diversity. It is the ability to bring fresh ideas that drive innovation and solve problems others may have missed. And if you are a recent college graduate or have been out of the workforce for a while, you need to watch this entire video so that you aren't left behind by the hidden rules of the hiring system.
The Bob Nevin Careers Channel. We're happy to have you here. Get ready to learn something new. Let's do this.
My name is Bob Nevin, and welcome to today's Explainer. I have 30 years as a career counselor and a recruiter, and I've put together an insightful explainer that challenges the status quo. It's a game changer, so let's dive in.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to picture this scenario for a second. You're looking at a job description online, right? You scroll down way past that massive checklist of mandatory skills, the software fluencies, the years of experience. And then you see a phrase that looks, well, completely harmless. We are looking for someone who is a great culture fit. I mean, it sounds welcoming. It makes it sound like the company really cares about human connection, harmony, and shared values. So you go ahead and submit your application, thinking your background is an absolute perfect match. You check every single box. You pass the initial screening. But then, after a brief, kind of awkward conversation with the hiring team, the rejection email arrives.
And the feedback is brief and honestly deeply frustrating. You're staring at your screen reading, you are highly qualified, but you just aren't a culture fit. But the truth hidden behind those exact words is that this harmless-sounding phrase, it's rarely a measure of harmony. It's actually an intentional, systematic shield. Look, when a company rejects you for culture fit, they're almost never talking about your values or your ethics. What they're doing is using this abstract, highly subjective metric to protect their corporate status quo from any sort of structural change. You probably thought you were being evaluated on your potential to contribute, but in reality, you were literally just being measured against a mirror.
So what does this all mean? The absolutely crucial question we have to ask ourselves in this explainer is this. Is culture fit a genuine tool for building teams, or is it basically a mechanism for legal discrimination? Asking this really peels back the layers on modern HR practices. Because think about it. When a hiring team reviews dozens of highly qualified candidates, the resumes often look remarkably similar. The technical assessments come back with nearly identical scores. So to make that final call, interviewers just rely on their intuition. They look for a spark, a shared language, this elusive feeling they love to call chemistry. But chemistry is incredibly hard to quantify, and relying on it, that opens the door to some profound biases.
Let's get into Section 1, Hiring in a Mirror, and the whole chemistry illusion. There's this fascinating and honestly kind of mind-blowing study published in the American Sociological Review. Researcher Dr. Lauren Rivera spent years tracking the hiring practices of these top-tier professional service firms, and what she discovered was a real eye-opener. She found that interviewers frequently defined culture fit just by looking for reflections of their own personal lives. They actively looked for candidates who played the same sports, went to the exact same types of universities, or shared the same leisure activities. I mean, this evaluation had absolutely nothing to do with a candidate's actual professional ability or how well they aligned with the corporate mission statement. It was purely an exercise in self-replication. It literally turned the hiring process into a sophisticated country club membership test. And you can see how this leads to a massive contradiction. On one hand, you have the stated corporate goal. Practically every company out there loudly claims they want diverse perspectives to drive innovation. But in practice, the actual framework evaluates candidates on how seamlessly they blend into the pre-existing environment. We see this play out all the time. A candidate gets praised for their amazing technical portfolio, only to be totally dismissed because they didn't seem enthusiastic enough during some casual lunch interview. Or someone gets passed over because their communication style feels slightly too direct, or maybe too reserved for the existing team's vibe. They say they want innovation, but they actively penalize anyone who doesn't perfectly blend in. This whole contradiction creates a really profound illusion inside these organizations. On one side, you've got the myth of meritocracy. Management loves to point to standardized interview questions and objective grading rubrics as proof of absolute fairness. But actually, scratch that. The reality is much more insidious. It's what we can call the invisible trapdoor. The final overriding criterion always seems to default back to subjective intuition and personal comfort. The culture fit check essentially allows an interviewer to just bypass objective data entirely. If an interviewer enjoys chatting with you about a shared hobby, suddenly your minor technical flaws are excused as areas for growth. But if they feel even slightly uncomfortable around you, your flawless technical record is completely dismissed because you just wouldn't fit in.
Which brings us to Section 2, how comfort kills innovation and the real cost of consensus.
When you select exclusively for culture fit, you get exactly this: cognitive stagnation. Basically, you're selecting a team that agrees really quickly on bad ideas, rather than a team that struggles constructively to find the great ones. By optimizing for immediate comfort, organizations are actively weeding out the exact friction required for progress. Think about it. When everyone on a team thinks the exact same way, went to similar schools, and shares the same background, consensus comes super easily. Decisions are made fast. The meetings feel incredibly smooth and productive. But that smoothness, that is a massive danger sign. Imagine a little stickman animation of your career under this framework. It's just a group of identical figures walking in a neat little circle, totally unaware that the circle is leading right into an architectural dead end. But here's the good news. The exact opposite of that stagnation is possible. There's brilliant research from the Kellogg School of Management conducted by Dr. Catherine Phillips that demonstrated diverse teams consistently outperform homogeneous ones. And why? Precisely because they lack that immediate comfort. When a team introduces a member from a completely different background, the existing members automatically prepare for a much more challenging conversation. They anticipate disagreement, they double-check their facts, they present more robust arguments, and they analyze risks with way greater scrutiny. The friction and the discomfort in diverse teams literally forces the entire group to elevate their performance. It's a game changer. So if it obviously damages long-term performance and literally kills innovation, why on earth does this system persist? Well, the answer lies in our psychology, specifically something called the homophily principle, coined by sociologists Lazarsfeld and Merton. This principle states that human beings are fundamentally wired to seek out individuals who mirror their own traits, beliefs, and behaviors. It takes conscious, active mental effort to engage with difference. And let's be real for a second. In a high-stress corporate environment where managers are constantly pressured to fill seats yesterday, relying on homophily is just the path of least resistance. It is simply so much easier to manage a group of people who laugh at the same jokes than it is to lead a diverse group with competing communication styles.
The ultimate uncomfortable truth of modern corporate structure is this: the system does not actually want disruption, it desperately wants predictability. Human resources departments have practically institutionalized this homophilia bias under the guise of organizational health. They create these complex onboarding rituals, corporate retreats, and shared company jargon just to reinforce a single collective identity. And anyone who questions the utility of those rituals, they are very quickly labeled a disruptor. The wild thing is, the companies that most loudly proclaim their commitment to innovation are often the ones most terrified of it. Because true innovation requires cognitive diversity, which naturally creates friction, and friction is the exact opposite of what a culture fit assessment permits. You're constantly told to bring your authentic self to work, but the unspoken caveat there is that your authentic self better perfectly match the profile they've already drawn up.
All right, let's move into Section 3, Seeking the Culture Ad, and how you can actually navigate this system.
To successfully navigate this frankly broken system, you have to realize that you might be playing the entirely wrong game in your job search. Think about it. You spend hours researching a company's website, memorizing their stated values, things like integrity, innovation, and collaboration. You repeat these buzzwords during your interviews to prove your alignment. But those stated values, they are rarely the actual culture of the company. The actual culture is the unwritten set of behaviors that actually get people promoted or fired. By trying to mold yourself into what you think their culture is, you are masking your true competitive advantage. You end up suppressing the unique perspective that makes you valuable, basically turning yourself into a commodity, just a slightly watered-down version of the people who already work there.
So the next time you're sitting across from an interviewer and they ask you one of those notoriously vague questions, I want you to recognize the hidden test that's actually occurring. When they ask something like, "How do you handle conflict?" or "What do you like to do outside of work?" they are not checking your ethics. They are really asking, "Are you predictable and safe?"
They are purely evaluating your predictability to make absolutely sure you won't disrupt their comfortable little ecosystem.
But here is the real secret. The path to genuine career resilience is not finding a company where you fit in perfectly on day one. It is finding an organization that values a culture add over a culture fit. Instead of asking how well you replicate the existing team, the culture add framework asks what missing perspective, skill, or background you bring that the team currently lacks. In a culture add environment, your difference isn't a problem. It is viewed as a massive asset to be integrated, not a defect that needs to be corrected. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The very next time you open your laptop, search for a job, and face that inevitable culture fit rejection, I want you to remember the machinery working behind it. You really have to ask yourself, are they just too fragile to handle your perspective? A rejection based on fit is so often just an admission of their own structural weakness. Please do not distort your professional identity to fit into a broken mold. The system desperately wants you to blend in, but your true value and your true ability to drive actual innovation lies entirely in your willingness to stand out.
See what I mean? Understanding this shift from a culture fit to a culture add is a massive win for your career. If you want more insider strategies that challenge the corporate status quo, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't do this alone. Call a recruiter who specializes in your niche, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to smash that like button, subscribe and turn notifications on, and share with everyone you know. Also leave a comment down below. Say hi or ask a question. Again, thanks for watching and see you in our next video. Cheers.